Chef Ken Arnone, and right now we're going to talk about marinating. And the big question is, why should you marinate different proteins like pork or shellfish or fish, beef, or chicken? Well, the big thing is flavor. You're going to be adding or imparting flavor of whatever the marinade is onto the main item itself. And the other reason is to tenderize, because some ingredients in the marinade can potentially tenderize the item that you're marinating. So first to look at is that we have three different ingredients. Number one is obviously oil. And we have our Colavita extra virgin olive oil here. And this is a great selection for marinating. The flavor of the extra virgin is going to be imparted onto the item itself. Number two, it helps so that whatever aromatics, garlic or spices or herbs are going to help to stick to the item itself. And it also keeps the outside or the exterior of the protein from drying out. So it keeps it a little bit moist. Next would be acid. You typically have some form of citrus juice, whether that's lemon juice, lime juice, or orange juice, or vinegar inside of there. So they definitively add flavor, and also the acid helps to break down or tenderize the item that you are marinating itself. And the last component or ingredients could be your aromatics. Those could be fresh herbs, rosemary, sage, parsley, tarragon, thyme, and then you also have garlic, which certainly can add a tremendous amount of flavor to your marinade. Crushed, chopped, whole cloves. And you also have different spices that you can add to that. Could be allspice, nutmeg, fennel seeds, anything along those lines. Crushed red pepper, definitively add flavor to the marinade itself. So two important questions here are, how much marinade and for how long do I marinate? So for the first question, you need approximately half a cup of marinade for every pound of protein that you're going to marinate. And that's a general guideline. The second question is, how long do we marinate items for? Well, first let's take a look at if there's acid in there or not. If you have acid in there, you want to be careful and not marinate things too long, because the acid can actually cook the protein and make the flesh a little bit soft and mushy. So you want to be cautious about that. Starting with fish and shellfish, you really don't need that much time. So if you have a fish fillet or shrimp or scallops, somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes should be enough to impart the flavor of the marinade ingredients. Turning to pork and poultry. Now, if you have a pork chop that has a bone in, slightly longer than one that doesn't. Chicken breast or chicken thighs, it has a bone in, slightly longer. So your time range should be somewhere between 2 and 4 hours for those items. Now, turning to beef. If you have a small steak, somewhere around 4 hours, and if you have a much larger steak bone in, you're probably looking at closer to 6 hours, 8 hours for that. And lastly, if you have a very tough cut of beef, you might want to consider marinating that overnight to allow the acid to make it a bit more tender and impart all the flavor. When you're marinating these items, you want to consider the container that you're using. So here we have a couple of different options. You have a few different glass vessels, and you also have a plastic bag. You want to avoid certain containers like aluminum, because with the acid in there, it can impart a very off flavor on the protein itself. So the first item that we're going to marinate here are some shrimp. These are peeled and deveined shrimp, and we're going to add some extra virgin olive oil to them. We're going to add some lemon juice, a bit of garlic, a pinch of crushed red pepper, and we're going to add some fresh oregano leaves. Now, you can leave the leaves whole, you can tear them, you can leave them in sprigs, or you can rough chop them. That's really something that's up to you. Then you want to make sure that you mix this up well. And we're also going to add some cracked black pepper. And now we're going to mix it together. Now, at this point, I would not add salt to it. The salt can actually draw the moisture out of the protein, so the preference would be right before cooking to add salt to the item itself. Now that this is really coated very well with the marinade, what we want to do is cover this with plastic wrap and set in the refrigerator. Again, these are shrimp. Somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes will be great. It's very important to note that anytime you're handling raw proteins, you want to make sure you wash your hands afterwards, and you should always be careful to clean and sanitize any work surfaces that the raw proteins have come in contact with, especially your cutting board. Otherwise, you run the risk of cross-contamination. And now we're going to marinate some bone-in pork chops. For this, we're going to start off with some cloves of garlic that we are going to crush. Place those right into the pan. going to take some fresh sage leaves and just tear them. Then we're going to add some extra virgin. And some fresh cracked black pepper. Want to make sure that we turn. Make sure that we mix the garlic up in there. Get the herbs and the oil all over the surface. Put some more cracked pepper on the opposite side. Just a touch more oil. And for something like this that you're going to allow now to marinate in the refrigerator for, let's just say, 2 to 4 hours, as we had talked about, you want to make sure that, say, after an hour, you turn the pork chops over, make sure that everything is coated well. At this point, again, cover them, place them in the refrigerator for about 2 to 4 hours. And now we're going to marinate some beef tenderloin medallions. And we have these in a plastic bag. We're going to take some extra virgin olive oil, drizzle that into the bag. We have some fresh herbs. We have some thyme here, some parsley, and a bit of rosemary. And then we're going to take some balsamic vinegar. Pour that right into the bag as well. And then some fresh cracked black pepper, which I cracked into a dish to make it easy to get into that bag. And here, you get some of that air out of the bag. Seal it up. And the great thing about marinating these in a plastic bag is that once you've sealed it, you can really make sure that you mix it up incredibly well. And then the protein items have coated evenly with the marinade. Now you set this in the refrigerator, and as we talked about for beef this size, about 4 to 6 hours.